Please join me in a warm Cooke County welcome for Chad Prather.
Oh, sit down. Thank you. Give me a little more, just a little bit more. Thank you. I thought about grabbing and shoving his guitar over here and singing him a country song. Yeah, give me one of that. Give me that thing for a second. I'll show you what Greg Abbott can't do. No capo. Let's have fun. How about this?
All right, now I'm giving my mark to this thing, so
Yeah.
what?
Hold my truck keys.
I'll come over to you. Well, no, it's there you go. There you go.
A little bit shorter than me. Sit on. You might know me from such classics as Quarantine Life and Take 6 Feet and Shove It. Snowflake Song. A long time ago, do you all remember we were knee-deep in debate? But we had one candidate who said that he could make us great, a thing we haven't been in quite a while. But Donald Trump's inauguration, it caused a left-wing agitation. Teardrops out in the street, can't believe they'd been beat. They went into their zones to hide, safety pens were then supplied. All the tears broadcast worldwide, the day the snowflakes cried. So bye-bye to the tears in your eye. First Obama, then your mama told you it'd be alright. You better grab a blankie, squeeze it real tight. You people need to get a real life. Grow up, snowflake, get a real life. The Snowflake Song. Oh my gosh. Thank you very much. I like that, Mark. Yeah. Give it back to you in one piece. Hey, Hoop, do I need to unmute this? That's working. I was born in New Jersey. But I believe that life begins at conception. And I was conceived in Dallas. So I always say that my parents did a horrible thing in a terrible place, Dallas. Now, it just happened to be where my parents were, New Jersey. My father was an engineer. He was working in Dallas, and they moved into New York City. We lived outside, well, they lived outside the city there in New Jersey. Just happened to be where my mother was when she went into labor with me. My father was watching the Dallas Cowboys play the Washington Redskins in an overtime game. This was 1972. And they went in overtime, and my father would not take my mother to the hospital because he wanted to see how the Cowboys game was going to turn out. Of course, Roger Staubach was out that season with a shoulder injury that he'd gotten in the preseason. I told Roger this story a couple of years ago, and he said, well, if I'd have been playing, it wouldn't have been in overtime. Probably right about that. But at the age of 4 months old, they moved back to my mother's home state, which was Georgia, I grew up there with the University of Georgia. And then after the University of Georgia, went to Columbia International University, which is a Bible school and a seminary as well, and bounced around the Southeast for a few years. And then I grew up in the equestrian world. We grew up cutting and reining, and we still have Prather quarter horses back home. My uncle runs that operation now. He's a cutting horse trainer as well as a cutting horse judge. Didn't know anything about rodeo. Just grew up in the equestrian world. Came out to Fort Worth about 21 years ago, and while I was here one weekend for work, I just fell in love with it. I felt like I finally found my tribe, you know. And so I never looked back. 6 months later, I packed up the truck. I was moving to Texas, and I haven't looked back. To me, Texas is the center of the universe. I think that Texas is the greatest state in the union. I think it needs to be the greatest state in the union. I think we need to be number one statistically, and across the board, we need to have the leadership in everything that we do. But right now, unfortunately, that's not where we are. We tend to fall somewhere in middle categories, middle numbers out of the top 50. We're somewhere usually in the 30s in most of our rankings, and these kind of things should not be. Texas doesn't need to be one state among 50. It needs to be the state that everyone looks to as the standard bearer for liberty and freedom and outspokenness of American life and culture. You know, I tell people everywhere I go that I'm running because I want to get government out of your life. That's the whole point. I like freedom. I like liberty. I was talking with my good friend on his radio show, Andrew Wilkow, a couple of weeks ago. And he said, you know, I live in New Jersey. He said, we would kill to have a governor like Greg Abbott in New Jersey. I said, well, that's because you're in New Jersey. I said, you're so used to having huge swaths of your liberty taken away from you that you've grown accustomed to it. And there are various states around the country who are used to that. You've got New York, you've got Gretchen Whitmer's Michigan, you have New Jersey, you've got California, Oregon, Washington. We know about all of those places. In fact, I was just in Washington State a few weeks ago. I was in Seattle where we did a show. And I go there every year, believe it or not. It's a packed house. And those people, those conservatives in desperately blue states, like Washington, they always come up to me and they say, what are you guys letting happen in Texas? And it's amazing because people in states like that, they recognize even more so than we do how much our liberty is being chipped away. And these things ought not be. As conservatives, we believe, at least in theory, at least in the words we say, we believe in small government. But government's gotten so expansive and out of control that if tomorrow suddenly government was made small, we really wouldn't know what to do with ourselves anymore. It's amazing when I talk about reducing and ultimately eliminating property taxes when people push back, well, where's the money going to come from? It's amazing how people, they don't want those taxes, but then as soon as you say we're going to do something about it, they fight to have those taxes paid. It's amazing to me. It's weird. It's weird. Either you're for liberty or you're not for liberty. Either you are for freedom or you're not for freedom. One way or another, none of it's going to be easy. We've got to fight for what we want. And we've gotten so far gone that it's almost like a tumor that has grown in around a precious organ. You can't just go in there and extract that tumor because it's going to kill the host. And in this case, the heart of Texas, talking about deep in the heart of Texas, we have something very malignant growing around the heart of Texas right now. And as he said in the intro, Texas is not the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore. We've gotten so used to status quo when the status isn't anything to quo about. These are things that ought not be. And so about a year ago, well, it was a year ago, a year or 2 weeks ago, actually July 2nd, I was in South Dakota getting ready for Donald Trump to come speak the following night at Mount Rushmore on July 3rd. I was having a glass of wine. We just finished dinner. I was there with Don Trump Jr., and I got a notification on my phone that said that yet another mandate was being handed down by the governor of Texas for shutdowns and more closures. And I don't know if it was because I was sitting next to a Trump or I was drinking wine, but I went to Twitter. And I jumped on Twitter and I said, I've had it. I'm going to run for governor in the state of Texas in 2022. I went to bed that night completely peaceful, tranquil, confident in my decision. Had no idea the storm of online onslaught that I had encouraged in people when I woke up the next morning. And I recall that story so specifically because we keep getting compared to South Dakota. You know, why isn't Texas doing like Kristi Noem did as the governor of South Dakota? She didn't shut down anything. There were no mandates. Why did Greg Abbott do what Greg Abbott did in unilaterally and dictatorially shutting down Texas, where millions of jobs were lost, livelihoods were ruined? And let me say, Mark, God bless you, brother, you and your wife. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. It's insanity that we're living in a day and age where justice is so far gone. I mean, they want to talk about the January 6th insurrection. Such a big word. Such a big word, insurrection. I saw where one of the, you've seen the, I guess you want to call it the iconic picture of the guy, the Democrat lawmaker there in the blue suit picking up the water bottles there in the Capitol Rotunda. He's talking about, I just donated this suit to the Smithsonian. So oppressed. So oppressed, where buildings are burning around America, cities are burning down. They're setting up little small kingdoms like Chaz and Chop in the Seattle area and having mostly peaceful protests. And he suffered by having to pick up some water bottles in the Capitol Rotunda. It's a sad day, and nobody with a platform condones what happens on January 6th, but the fact that you're having to deal with that is insanity. Pure insanity. Because you're guilty and you have to be proven innocent. Right now, they have already directed a narrative to make sure that you're set up as a scapegoat and be pushed down and put down, so that now everybody that is a conservative that speaks out for small government, limited government, and freedom and rights is going to be immediately called an insurrectionist. It's going to be called somebody who's anti-American. Somebody's going to be called a racist. Somebody's going to be called a Nazi, a white supremacist. It's amazing. Threat to national security. Just go ahead and realize, folks, you've got one of two choices. Now, you can go be a liberal, and God bless you, it might be an easier life. For now. But a house of cards always falls in on itself. And these days, I miss good traditional liberals. I really do. These days, we don't even have liberals anymore. We've got progressives that are jumping so far off the deep end. People say, we need to come back to the middle. We can't identify the middle anymore because the left has gone so far left, gotten out on the tips, that we don't even recognize them as Americans anymore. When they say that the American flag is a symbol of hate and oppression, when they want to say that America was founded in 1619 and not 1776, when they want to push critical race theory as a serious form of education and philosophy, a thing that has no place in human society, critical race theory, when they want to push revisionist history, they want to make history palatable. These are the kind of things that we're up against these days. When sinfulness and licentiousness and it's been laughed at and laundered and pandered to the masses, so that now we look at it and we think, well, that's just normal society. We can't get this bad. We're in trouble. Let me just go ahead and tell you, folks. They're going to call you all sorts of names. Just go ahead and go on anyway. You're going to be a conservative. You're going to fight for our liberty. Just go ahead and expect to be called those names, suck it up, have some tough skin, and go on about the mission anyway. Because they're going to call you those names, and that's okay. Just say, you know what? If you're going to call me a racist, that's what you're going to call me. I'm going to keep on going on. Calvin, you are a terrible racist. I mean, your son is sitting right over here on the front row. You're a terrible racist. It's insanity, the things they call us. My mother always said, I can see the reflection up there. My mother always said she thought she'd see me on a big screen. She's not here. I'll tell her it wasn't that impressive. I want to get government out of your life. People want to say now, they want to say, why aren't you guys more like Florida? Ron DeSantis is doing a heck of a job, and he is. I want Texas liberty to be so prevalent, so strong, that when we look at Ron DeSantis, we say, that was a nice job, little fellow. I want us to be so full of liberty, so full of freedom, that the idea of bondage to anything, especially big government, being overburdened with taxes, having our borders overrun, having our power system unreliable, having our water in crisis, all of these things that we could list off. I want that stuff to be such a thing of the past that we look around the rest of the country and say, what do you mean? Well, you can't compare us to South Dakota. South Dakota doesn't have its own toast. There's no waffle irons in the shape of Florida. This is Texas. This is by God, Texas. And we pledge our allegiance to Texas. And I realized 20 years ago when I came to Texas that Texas is a spirit. It's not taught, it's caught. You either get it or you don't get it. And I tell people everywhere, like that squiggly line thing we used to see at the mall, you stared at it, and if you looked at it cross-eyed, you could see a pirate ship or whatever in there. You either saw it or you didn't see it. That's the way Texas is. You either get it or you don't. I caught the spirit of Texas a long time ago. I used to tell a friend of mine, I said, you think about you Texans, y'all would rather be Texans than Americans. He said, you're right. And these days, Mark, the way things are going, the way we're looking at the federal government, the overreach of 2.5 million bureaucrats that are sticking their greedy fingers in America's pockets, particularly right here in the state of Texas, we've got a federal government that's no longer truly representing the rights of the people, the values of the people. And that's happening, it's trickled down to Austin, Texas. So now we don't have red states anymore because we don't have red cities anymore. Every big city in America that I know of is blue. We've got 5 cities in Texas that are influencing the one major hub. We've got Dallas, we've got San Antonio, we've got Houston, we've got El Paso, we've got Fort Worth now, which is a shame that Fort Worth has now gone blue in the way that it has. And they all influence Austin. And somebody said to me, a newspaper reporter recently said, if you make it to Austin, do you think you can handle being in Austin since Austin's not like the rest of Texas? And I said, what you just said is very telling. The fact that the capital of our state doesn't represent the rest of Texas, that's our problem. So I jumped into this race at a grassroots level, which is politispeak for saying I'm broke. And we said we don't have anything except a platform and a voice. I've got an opportunity through a podcast and a television show to get things off my chest. I had no idea a couple of years ago when I put my camera phone on the dashboard of the truck, started talking to it, which for me was a form of therapy. I didn't know I was going to waste all your time the way that I did. I had no idea millions of people were going to start watching these videos, but they did. And I said, I'm a humorist. I don't want to get into politics. That promise to myself lasted about 4 months. And then Hillary Clinton was running. Of course, Donald Trump was running. And I didn't understand the dynamic. I didn't understand Donald Trump at the time. A lot of us did, right? You either got it or you didn't get it, right? You either saw it or you didn't. I didn't quite catch it yet. But I said, I know we can't have Hillary Clinton. Went into the voting booth, and there was a box that said Hillary and one that said not Hillary. That's the one I checked off. And we got Donald Trump. Thank God we got Donald Trump. And the face of politics forever changed right there. But it's interesting to me that we've made politics a celebrity thing. Politics should be boring. You shouldn't know the name of the Secretary of the Interior. You shouldn't care that everything that's being said and tweeted and broadcast on the news, these guys shouldn't have so much notoriety. So now people are pursuing politics like it's something to be achieved. And tell me why in the world Greg Abbott on one side, and let's say whoever on the other side, let's say they spend $100 million to get elected governor in the state of Texas. That's probably what they'll spend. Why would you spend $100 million for a job that pays $153,000 a year? Doesn't make any sense. And let me tell you something, if you're willing to spend that kind of money to get in office, guess how much money they're willing to spend once they make it there? Because they know it's not their money, it's your money. Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe Puddinhead Biden. P-Pads Joe Biden loves to tell people. Joe drank 3 Ensures this afternoon, has been in bed for 4 hours already. It's insanity what we've embraced and what we've allowed to happen. Joe Biden wants to talk about $6 trillion infrastructure. Wants to talk about a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. What's a trillion? We don't even know what a trillion is. Throwing those words around. I don't want us to even use the word trillion. We can't relate to it because we can't feel it. It doesn't exist. The money's not there and the money's not theirs, but they're going to spend it. We've created more cash, we've printed more cash in the last 4 months than all of American history combined. It's insanity. Now bring it down to the state level, bring it down to Texas. Greg Abbott, as governor, has increased our spending during his tenure as governor by $40 billion. That's not conservatism, that's not small government. He spent $295 million, took taxpayer money, to spend on contact tracing. That one thing is enough to boot him out of office. He's pledged $100 million to help supplement higher education. That's taxpayer money. But yet your taxes are going through the roof and he's crowdsourcing a wall. Or so he said. Now, I was just down at the border last week. I head back to the border again tomorrow. Val Verde County, which is Del Rio, is apprehending 1,100 illegals coming across the border every single day. That's just one of 20 counties. The other day, Friday morning, in Rio Grande City, they pulled the troopers off the border because by 10:30 in the morning, they'd already apprehended 700. They had no other place to put them. I've seen, in the last week, I have seen video footage of what the cartels are doing to people that will keep you awake at night. It's insanity. Folks, we are literally at war. We're being encroached, we're being invaded. You see the pictures of the women and the children. I'm talking about seeing men come across our border in camouflage. Val Verde County this year has already seen 84 countries represented in the people coming across. I don't know if you realize or not, there's not 84 countries below our southern border. They're not coming from Finland and France. They're coming from Pakistan. They're coming from Yemen. They're coming from Oman. They're coming from the Sudan. They're coming from Rwanda. They're coming from all these places around the world, places that do not intend to do anything good for us. And they're couching it under the narrative of these women and children who are being forced out of their countries. Listen, we're sending, as the federal government is sending tens of billions of dollars down to these countries, to these democratic dictatorships with no oversight and no accountability on our part to make sure that that money is getting spent the right way. And so what happens? It's incentivizing people to leave their country, come to America. And I just met with Sheriff Joe Frank Martinez down in Val Verde last week. And here's what he told me. He said, I'm a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. He said, I didn't like the last administration, but the border was shut down. It was closed when Trump was in office. He said, I voted for this administration. I'm not happy with this administration because the border's wide open. And that ought to tell you something. There are ways to close down the border. There's so many ways to close down the border. I've said over and over again, some ideas aren't so politically correct, but I don't think we can solve the problems we have in this country right now and still be politically correct. Can't do it. Complex problems involve complex solutions, and they're not going to be pretty, folks. It's time we empower Texans to make sure that they protect their home, to protect their land. Texans. Not calling 911 every time. Texans. Because let me tell you something. We're coming to a day when you're going to call 911 and nobody's going to show up, because they're not showing up now. Our friends over in Kinney County, we visited with them. Sheriff Brad Coe, County Attorney Brent Smith. You know what they're doing in Kinney County? They've gone to the governor over and over again, and have asked for DPS resources. And Governor Abbott continually tells them, says, we've got all the resources. And they say, well, we don't have them here in Kinney County. You might have them, Governor, but we don't have them. He said, you're going to have them. They don't have them. So you know what? He said, we're going to go to the governor's office one more time. He said, we've already got it set up. They're going to crowdfund and crowdsource within the county $15 million, and they're hiring their own force of security contractors. The same guys that defended our troops and watched out for our troops and protected our troops in different places in our interest in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. They're going to hire those guys. Because it's time that counties and individuals and people start taking control of their own destiny and protection. We're getting to a point where that's going to be a regular occurrence, folks. And I say more power to them. Joe Frank Martinez, he said, I don't like it. It's like hiring a bunch of mercenaries. I said, good. People, see, I say these things, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I think you get the point. I think that you understand the spirit of Texas when I tell you that since 1800, we've never marshaled a force of more than 1,000 fighting men. And Texas, under Sam Houston, beat Santa Anna. They gained their own nationality. They became a nation. They became a republic with less than 1,000 fighting men. And it's going to come down to a remnant in Texas that's going to say no more. That's enough. People who had no reason to get involved in this fight. You can have them. Listen, Houston and Crockett and Travis and Bowie and all those guys, they didn't have to come to Texas and get in that fight. But they heard the call because the spirit of Texas captured them even from a distance. There's going to be a remnant in this state, or else we're doomed. We have a future that I believe is untenable in less than 10 years unless we do something right now. And I promise you, big government is not the solution. So a lot of people say to me, they say, why'd you get involved with this thing? Well, it wasn't, because I tell jokes for a living, right? A lot of people are still waiting on the punchline. There's no punchline. This is not a popularity contest. God knows I don't need this kind of popularity. Nobody needs this kind of thing. But at some point in time, you have to look around and say, we got to make a difference. Somebody's got to stand up and fight. And I appreciate that there's other primary contenders that have now gotten into this race. I appreciate the voice that they have. I appreciate that they too didn't have anything to gain by this. They just said enough's enough. You got a governor that's been sitting in office for 25 years in some form or fashion in the state of Texas. He's never been challenged by any contender. Never. 2015, I posted headlines just the other day on my social media. There were things that are exactly what he's saying today in 2021. Each one of those headlines that were posted in 2015. Greg Abbott has become a campaign conservative. You saw what he did with the shutdown. People say, well, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback now and look back. No. We should have never shut anything down. Let me tell you why. Because it's unconstitutional. To step on people's liberty like that is unconstitutional. People say, well, how would you have known what to do? Because I've read the Constitution. That's how we know. And this Constitution says I'm free. I don't have to ask anybody's permission to go to church. I don't have to ask anybody's permission to go to work, provide for my family. I don't have to ask your permission to breathe air, drink a beer, enjoy live music. I don't have to ask anybody's permission. This is America, and even larger, this is Texas. The Constitution wasn't written to keep you safe. The Constitution was written to keep you free. When we start stepping on people's freedoms, that's when we know we're wrong. Greg Abbott unilaterally shut us down. Why do I say that? Because he didn't consult with anybody else. He made the decision. He didn't talk to legislators. He made the decision. Look at this absolute show, this travesty that's going on right now. This weak-kneed, noodle limp, attack, pushback, threats, empty threats to these House Democrats who ran and hid under Nancy Pelosi's skirt. And Greg Abbott says they're going to be arrested. They want to be arrested. If it were me, Fox News and CNN and MSDNC would be showing my fat face with a Black & Decker cordless screwdriver changing the locks on their offices in the Capitol. You want to know? I don't know if that was for me, but I'm taking it. I would take their chairs from the House floor, throw them out in the yard, and set them on fire. You say, you can't do that. The hell I can't. Take me to jail. Arrest me. Let's change that narrative. Texas governor arrested for what? Shooting their chairs with a shotgun. You make it so that they can never hold office in the state again. Yeah, they're arrested for dereliction of duty. Yeah, they're fined. Of course they are. But then you fire their staff. You make sure that any committee assignment is erased. You hold an emergency quorum and you get on with business. Things are going on in this state that were just absolutely insane. The gender modification of children. Not a single mention of it in Greg Abbott's special session. Nothing. Property taxes gets an honorable mention, a footnote at the bottom of the page. You guys like renting your house that you own? Nobody does. Do you like having this absolute government overreach? You think mask mandates are over with? Give me a break. They're coming back. They want to start spinning things like Delta variant and Lambda variant. And by the way, the House Democrats, before I get away from that, they're liars. Let me tell you why I say that. 51 of them go to Washington, D.C. Apparently 5 of them that are vaccinated have tested positive for COVID. All right. That means 10% of the House Democrats tested positive for COVID while vaccinated. That is the highest statistical super spreader event of anyone that's ever been recorded. Because the highest so far is 7%. And they decided to go up there and 10% of them got it. Now who's lying? Because either they didn't get the vaccine or they don't have the COVID. One of them's lying. Must have been the Miller Lite. Yeah, that's a shame. Miller Lite, too.
COVID has some self-respect.
Amen. But you think the mask mandates are gone? They're not, because the governor left space. He said we're going to end the mandates, but you know, if you read what he said, he left an opportunity there. He left his own freedom to go back and mandate and shut things down if he deems it necessary. Austin's doing it. That's going to be hard for him because it's an election. He's trying to look like a conservative. He had Trump down the other week. And I'm telling you, I've been around Donald Trump. I know how Donald Trump thinks a little bit. And in a couple of months, Donald's going to look around. He's going to say, who the hell told me to endorse this guy? I promise you it's going to happen. Because right now, every time Ron DeSantis makes a decision, Greg Abbott puts his finger in the air, spends another $25,000 on a poll, and here's what the popular opinion are saying, and he goes out and he says the same thing Ron DeSantis said, except the difference is Ron's doing it and Greg is saying it. These things cannot be. So I'm in a position here where it's real simple. These guys that want to control you, these folks that want to spend your money, these folks that want to stay in office from now until the Lord comes back, who have learned how to monetize everything in sight and have so much power that we can't even relate to what they're doing. One of these days, I am writing a book. I am going to expose. I told Don Huffines the other day, and I love Don. I appreciate Don. I really do. Appreciate what Don's doing. He doesn't have to do this at this point in his life, but he believes in Texas. I told Don, I said, man, you guys better hope I stay in this race for the whole time, because you don't want me off the leash. Y'all need to keep me under the rules for a little while. Because it's disgusting, Calvin. You know this. You've seen it. I met Calvin. The day I met Calvin, guess what? It was during the legislative session. He's down there working. Al is down there working. These guys who go down there, and I'm like, what breed of human being are you? They're the people who love the state. They love freedom. They love liberty. And they want to fight for your rights. They want to make sure that you get government out of your life. And that's where we are. The border problem, it's a problem, but it can be solved. It can be solved at the state level. We can force the hand of the federal government, but there's a lot of things we can do right here. The energy grid. We got to get back to, we got to stop vilifying oil and gas and coal. We got to get back to things that made Texas great in terms of an energy sector. Green energy is not it. Amazingly ironic that Greg Abbott, in the middle of the Snowmageddon shutdown, they gave him an award for being one of the greenest governors. He didn't show up to accept the trophy. You know what they ought to do with those windmills? Bring them down to the border, turn them on high. Let that be the last obstacle for the Mexican Ninja Warrior race trying to get across. So turn them loose. We got ranchers down there. You know what? Ammo's expensive. Let's provide them some. I'm serious. People don't like when I say this, and I really don't care what people like or don't like. People say, man, you rub the cat the wrong way. Well, the cat can turn around. You want to spend billions of dollars? Everybody down there on a ranch on the border should have a backhoe. We'll remind you. We'll give you a little step-by-step guide. Remind you that cadaver dogs can smell to 12 feet deep. Dig your hole to 15. And when you see somebody with a shaved head and tattoos on their face, you put them in it. You say, that's cruel. So is human traffickers that are up 300% the last month. We would have already been at war. We would have already been at war if this was 1700. This was the 1800s. If folks like Travis and Houston were still here, we would already be at war. We wouldn't be putting up with this government. We have to press the federal government to deem cartels international terrorist organizations. Then we get the military involved. Why does Greg Abbott only have 500 National Guardsmen on the border when there's 20,000 left that are available? Why? Why is there no communication between DPS and Border Patrol? Why is Border Patrol acting as an Uber driver to pick folks up and take them to a processing center where they get a court date that's 2 years out and release them into the country with no means of making them return? Why are buses disappearing in the middle of the night, filled with illegals? Airplanes flying them into the interior of America, winding up in Sevierville, Tennessee, Columbus, Ohio, in Idaho. Why? We've got to leverage the power and the size and the strength of Texas against the federal government and make this stop. I want to keep 12 of those buses. I want to fill it up with illegals, and I want the Texas Rangers to escort those buses on a 2-day trip to Washington, D.C. And I want them to pull up right to the Capitol steps and get them as close as they can and just open those doors and turn them loose. So here you go, Joe Biden, it's your problem. This is what we do. We have to start shaming the left. Stop trying to hold position. Stop trying to keep it safe. Stop making history palatable. History is dangerous. The Constitution is dangerous. The Declaration is dangerous. The men who signed it were signing their own death warrant. At what point in time do we say, history is ours to write today? Because those guys who fought for this great state in the 1800s and made it a republic, and those who fought to keep it great throughout the centuries, they're gone. But in just a few small years, we're not going to have a legacy of Texas to hand over to our children and our grandchildren. It's going to be gone. Bureaucrats will have ruined it. It'll be virtually unrecognizable. The state will be gone. And you say, oh, this is theatrics. No. Come with me to the border and I'll show you. Come with me to the border, I'll show you. I watched a video 2 days ago of the atrocities of cartels. This is who we're up against. Val Verde County alone, I refer back to that, $25 million a week is what the cartels are making just on traffic through that county. It's insane. We're about to have a major water crisis. Our education is out of control. We have teachers, God bless you. If you're a teacher, God bless you. But we got to take the shackles off your hands and let you educate, let you test and evaluate, and you do your job that you are professionally trained to do. People say, you're against standardized testing. No, I'm against training for a test. STAR test is a joke. Our kids, listen, at the turn of the century, between 1899 and 1900, the turn of the 20th century, kids in those days only went to school to the 8th grade, and usually 3 months out of the year. Those tests, those exit exams that were given to 8th graders, or the equivalent thereof, in 1900, David Barton with Wall Builders, he's actually given the test to PhD level educators who are in school. He's given those exit exams to PhD level students. He said not a single one has ever passed. Because we're not educating anymore. We're not educating anymore. We're training for a test and we're giving them some. I believe it's standardized. There's some things that should be standardized. I believe before you graduate high school in the state of Texas, you should have to pass the exam to be a citizen. That doesn't mean if you fail it, you're not a citizen. But I think it ought to be a requirement. I think you should have to pass the citizenship exam just to hold office. People don't even know how a primary election works. So many things have escaped us. Because we just expected somebody else to do the job. And I finally just got sick of waiting around. I said I was never going to run for office. I didn't need that in my life. I didn't want any of that kind of garbage, and here I am. So I encourage you guys. And I'm here. I'll hang with you. We can answer questions. There's so many things going on in this state. And my heart is broken because of what I see. It's not a swamp. That's too mean to call it a swamp. It's mean to the swamp. Because at least certain things live in the swamp. This is somebody took the plug out of a porta potty. And it's just spewing out down Congress there in Austin, Texas. And we got to sit there and smell that reeking, nasty havoc that is being played on our state. It's insanity. I do believe that as Texans, we should have the right to vote as the people on legislation and on our future. We should have that right. And I believe when the people vote, and when the people say this is our priority, you should have a governor in office who is willing to fight for those priorities and the will of the people. Right now, you don't have that. There were 8 GOP primary priorities. There were 8. 2 of them made it to the governor's desk. He didn't want them there. And they were so watered down from the original bill that was written, it's virtually unrecognizable. Under this new, I don't even call it constitutional, it's not a constitutional carry law. Not a constitution. When 18 to 21-year-olds still can't carry without going through all this permit process, it's not constitutional. Under that law, Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton would not have been able to carry a firearm because they would have been too young at the time of the Revolution. Put that into perspective. They can go and fight for our country and die and carry a firearm in the state of Texas. This is Texas. You know what Greg Abbott should have done last year? He should have said, we're up against something that I don't know what it is. Nobody knows right now. But we've come together before in moments in time of crisis. And I believe we can do that now. I believe that we're in a situation where it's very unknown. But I want to encourage you. You take care of yourself. You be responsible. You be an adult. If you want to wear a mask, you wear a mask. If you want to stay at home, stay at home. If you don't want to go to church, you don't want to go to work, don't do that. If you don't want to go and open your business, that's up to you. We'll help you along the way. But you're a Texan. And you're strong enough and independent enough to make your own choices. To take care of yourself and take care of your neighbor. That's what he should have done. It's not that hard. He said, people would have died. People are dying every day. People are dying every day. It's insanity. We want to start, I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but everybody in the room don't die one day of something. I'd rather die knowing that I lived for something. And that I left something, as the Bible says, an inheritance to my children's children, like a righteous man is supposed to. And among that is not just my goods. I can leave them a watch. I can leave them some silver cufflinks. They'll probably sell it at the pawn shop. I can leave them a little bit of cash. But what if I can leave them a legacy? What if I can leave them a state? What if I can leave them an inheritance of freedom and liberty so they don't have to fight this fight? So I'm running for governor. I encourage you guys, if you will, please help us. Prather2022.com is the website. Takes money to do it. I'm pretty proud of how we've done things. We've spent virtually nothing. And we're still mentioned, at least honorably mentioned, in almost every conversation that's had about primary challenger. And it's going to be an interesting little race. It's going to be one where the heart of Texas is at stake. And it's going to take a lot to get an incumbent Republican out of that office who's been there so long. He's entrenched, wrapped around that heart of Texas. You can also go to Beto22.com. It comes to me. We do guerrilla warfare, y'all. Greg Abbott will raise $18.7 million in the 10 days after the Texas legislative session. That ain't mom and pop money. I don't know how many of you in Cooke County were sending in money to Greg Abbott, but it wasn't $18.7 million. He's opened himself up to multinational corporations, giving open arms to Tesla, to HP, to Facebook, to Amazon. He's bowed the knee to big tech. He's opened them up and said, come on in here. See, they don't just come in here and provide jobs. They come in here and bring influence, they bring money, and they make sure that things go the way they want them to go, so that before very long, Austin becomes a Silicon Valley. And now we have California values in the heart of Texas. You just think the tumor is big right now. It's growing. When the Chinese government owns 300 acres of land down near Laughlin Air Force Base, we got a problem. There's a lot of things going on in this state, folks. And there's a lot of folks that I want you to be aware that there are those out there fighting for you. Go to Chad Prather. Go to Prather2022.com. Had a Biden moment there. Prather2022.com. You can also go to AbbottOut.com. And all comes to us. I've been asking people for an $8 donation. maybe $80, maybe $800, maybe $8,000, but 8. And the reason I've been doing that is because of this. There were 8 legislative priorities, and they got ignored. And somebody asked me recently, they said, if it had been you, the governor, what would you have done? I said, the people. They said that's their priority. The GOP worked to put those priorities together to represent the people. You fight for that. I can only think of one thing that Greg Abbott ever stuck his neck out legislature, ever. That was pre-K for all. After that, he just flown under the radar. And everybody comes to me and says, well, you're doing such a good job. You're doing nothing but spend your money, allocate funds in different places where it's useful, appoint people to positions of power, and take and hold and keep your money. It's time to change it. Calvin, thank you guys. God bless you. God bless Texas. Cindy.
Everybody stand up. We're going to get a picture with the crowd. We're doing a selfie with the crowd.
Everybody,